one constant feeling reigns over the 130-plus year history of NC State Wolfpack football. Hope. And when there's hope, well, Pack fans can always relate. Pack family, time for a true look at your team. Expert analysis, special guests, and a Carter Finley-sized bag full of X's and O's. Let's get hooked up for Pack Therapy. Here are your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Wolfpack great Mike Glennon.
Dave Doeren, wherever Steve Smith is, you felt the wrath of Dave Doeren post-game. There was some internal or external motivation for the Wolfpack. For those of you that didn't follow, Steve Smith Sr., Panthers legend, was the guest picker for the college game day. All his Utah stuff on, he was filling himself. And when it came to NC State, he said they were just waiting for basketball season, and then he picked Clemson. Dave Doeren said, "We're not a basketball school, and you can kiss my ass, Steve Smith," immediately after the game. Did you like to see it from the head man? What's your take?
I'm still undecided on it because we talked about it weeks ago. Deion Sanders and the whole WWE.
It was Deion
format.
Sanders, Dan Lanning from Oregon, Ryan Day from Ohio State, like back to back. All were cutting promos like "you and me, brother."
Right. And I loved it because it did get the attention that those guys got, and obviously Ohio State, Deion's Deion, and then Oregon, they're bigger programs than NC State. But, I mean, it was all over social media. I just felt it was a little bit of a low-hanging fruit. Like, the celebrity guest picker, do your homework. When in the history has a celebrity guest picker done their homework? They're not watching film. They're just looking at it, making a pick. And being from Virginia, I don't know what you would say about this. Before I got to NC State, when I thought of NC State, I thought of Jimmy V. And I think that's partly because of the ESPYs that you constantly are seeing that play. I mean, it's maybe the most infamous national championship play ever.
Yeah, I mean,
it's because you're constantly reminded of it. The Jimmy V Classic, the ESPYs, during March Madness, they show it.
Jimmy V
so
week.
I think from a national standpoint, that's what people actually think of when they think of NC State is basketball. But to Dave's point, especially during his tenure, we have been better at football than we have been at basketball.
The guest picker thing is funny, right? And Ryan Day did the same thing to Lou Holtz. Like, Lou Holtz is not an analyst; he's just a guy that showed up on a set. Because Steve Smith does stuff in the media for the NFL, it kind of passes. If it would have been like guest picker Tim McGraw or something, it would be like, but sometimes that's the guest picker. Like guest picker, who was it, Luke Combs for the App State, whatever. Like if it would have been that, it would have been even more ridiculous.
Yeah, Steve Smith does bring a little bit more credibility.
Yeah.
He
you're not exactly
covers
attacking
NFL,
like a civilian.
Right.
Yeah.
He lives in Charlotte, so he's familiar with NC State, with this program, I would think. But, I mean, the fans love it. And
it did what it was
Dave does it
to do.
every year. I mean, he has one of these lines every year. And it's a well-timed thing. I mean,
it did what it was supposed to do. If you watched college football for like the 2 or 3 hours after that took place, and they did like the, hey, let's go back to the studio for an update, like they were talking about NC State football, which is important, right? Like you had just beaten Clemson. You needed to give a reason for every, hey, let's go back to the studio to be NC State beating Clemson, and he made that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of the whole Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, like put him on the map. But that puts NC State on the map again, and it's Clemson. No one, in a couple of years from now, no one's going to remember that this was a 4-3 matchup. It's when we beat Clemson, do you remember what Dave Doeren said after the game? And, I give him credit that he puts himself out there. It was a mic drop moment, and then he goes to the press conference and he backs it up again. And
the only thing I don't like about it, actually, you have to be careful with that, because if you're not that guy, that can come off really cringy. And I think he was flirting with it. He was right on the line of like and oh
yes,
and so
it was right on the line. And then also you got to be careful, because this is when all the kind of Twitter trolls want to come out, and they're going to be going back and looking at all the numbers and the stats, and I'm sure they're going to bring up that there's been no championships in this time.
He did.
So it's like,
and he didn't exactly say it to Clemson, which I think was smart. He attacked Steve Smith Sr. because Clemson's going to reload at some point, and you don't want them bringing up bulletin board material
Right.
like 2 years from now when they have the next Trevor Lawrence. Let's keep the Dave Doeren train rolling. I give him and Robert and Nye a lot of credit. We going into last week, right? We had 2 podcasts last week that we released going into the Clemson game, and I think we both at different points said the number one priority of the bye week was to drop a billion different ways to get KC Concepcion the ball. They got KC Concepcion the ball in a bunch of different ways. I have the numbers here. NC State threw for 138 yards. 83 of them were to KC Concepcion. 72 of them were on one pass to KC Concepcion. NC State rushed for 64 yards in the game. 51 of them were from KC Concepcion. 50 of them on one run to KC Concepcion. They did not fix everything in their offense. I don't think it was possible for them to fix everything in their offense, but they did work very hard to get that guy the ball, and that's looking like a good decision.
They did a great job getting him the ball. I mean, he's the offense right now. Mm-hmm. My question going forward is that sustainable? Mm-hmm. You know, every defense, that's all they're going to be worried about is where this guy is. But I think at the end of the day, MJ, did he light it up? No, but he did what he needed to do, and that's take care of the football. And to me, the key going forward to this team is if they it's going to be the first quarter. If they can get off to a lead, then they can play conservative, and then MJ just has to take care of the ball. What I don't know if this team can do is play from behind. And this game showed that, you know, if we get a lead, if we have the defense playing the way that they are, then all you have to do as a quarterback is be a game manager. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. People win a lot of games playing the quarterback position, just managing the game.
We need a new word, and this is a side conversation. We need a new word for game manager that's positive because game manager, it's like changed the meaning.
But it is not. It shouldn't be negative.
I know,
there are plenty of NFL quarterbacks that have made a ton of money and won a ton of games just managing the game.
And it's become, you can't say it now without people taking it as an insult.
Right. It's not an insult.
We need to just change the verbiage. But going back to the KC Concepcion stuff, the long run I thought was the type of creativity I'm looking for, because before the play I actually said, you know, what is this formation? They had all their eligibles or at least 3 of the wide receivers in my memory to the short side of the field, maybe even 4. They might have had a quads to the short side, and I'm going like, what the heck is going on here? They motion KC into the backfield, which is just window dressing, then hand it off to him to the wide side, give him all that room and space. He ends up one-on-one with a player in the secondary, and that's going to go poorly for the guy in the secondary a bunch. Which is the creativity I'm talking about. Then the long touchdown catch was they just motioned a guy away, so it was one receiver one-on-one. He runs an in and just outruns the entire Clemson entire Clemson defense, which Clemson might be Clemson, but you know they all still run the same 40s from high school. That's all Clemson gets. So it's just it's the dynamic ability, and you know, if your offense isn't cooking, but you know you have one guy that can be explosive, you have to make your chances count, and they did it enough to get the win.
Yeah, I think Robert and I did do a good job. It was a 4-0, which in NFL you can't even do that. You can't align that many guys, but to get everyone on one side of the field and just a running back and then motion them back, then they get a numbers advantage. It was a great job, and you know, to see the running back be a lead blocker like a fullback, and then he was out the gate, and I think that shows the playmaking ability that he has, is that if he can get the edge, get the corner, he's going to take it a long way. So I thought Robert and I called a good game. I thought there was some a few instances of some creative stuff. They found ways to, you know, the touchdown to KC in the first half, where again it was a motion, a bunch. I think that was another 4-0 actually. They motioned him to a 4-0 and made the Clemson defenders, there was a man there in man. So when you have to run through all that traffic, it's almost impossible for the DB. So I thought that was a good play call as well by an eye.
And just for those of you that might not know, 4-0 just means 4 wide receivers to one side, 0 to the other side. You know, if you think 2 wide receivers each side, that's 2-2, just to give you that little breakdown. MJ Morris. I want to talk MJ Morris and how they utilized him and how they maybe protected him a little bit. But first, let's take a quick break. The Pack Therapy Podcast will be back in a minute. Pack Therapy Podcast continuing. I'm Tim Donnelly alongside my co-host Mike Glennon. NC State quarterback MJ Morris gets the W over Clemson. Put it like quarterbacks get all the praise, they get all the negativity. So After the Duke game, he probably got a little more blame than he should. After this one, he's going to get the praise that comes with beating Clemson. Were they actively hiding him? Because there were a lot of those, one and run reads, a lot of the screens, a lot of it didn't feel like they were completely trusting him to go through a progression for a lot of that game.
I agree. It didn't feel like they completely unleashed him, and I think that ties back into the playing with a lead. And I think at that point, this felt like a Dave Doeren victory. He wants to win with defense. He wants it to be that play with a lead and
not many penalties,
right.
No turnovers.
I will say,
yes.
Play
clean and let the defense.
Honestly,
handle it.
this game reminded me a lot of the Duke game, but what Duke did, it was like and MJ did more than the Duke quarterback did, but it really came down to two big plays.
Yep.
And it was ironically the second touchdown, the long one to KC Concepcion, was a cover 0 where there was no one left, and MJ put it where he needed to. So I thought he did what was needed to be done to win the game. Now, when I say he won them the game, no, I think the defense and KC won them the game, and I did feel like the play calling kind of reflected that. But was that a reflection of MJ, or was it a reflection of how well the defense was playing and playing with a lead?
If we don't have to, why? Right? If
Right.
we don't have to put our young quarterback in a position to have to make big plays or make mistakes, why is kind of the argument there. It's interesting you brought up 0. The very first drive of the game, one of the things I do, and I was up in the press box, is the first 2 series for each team. I take pretty detailed notes because I like to see, especially coming off a bye, what did you draw up? The first drive of the game, Clemson run stuff. They completed a short one for 4 yards, 3rd and 6, in which Peyton Wilson made the tackle. I want to talk about Peyton Wilson in a second. The third down, they brought the absolute house and got smoked for a long gain. Should have been a big gain, but they got saved by a hold downfield after the catch. And it ends up, the spot foul. It ends up being a 3rd and 2 afterwards, and they actually get off the field for a punt. But, Tony Gibson he's got some intestinal fortitude on him because they've been burnt by that a couple times this year, and he still, when he feels the need, sends the apps what was it in Madden in 01, engage 8. He's just sending the house.
I think that was a true 8-man pressure, and cover 0, whatever the blitz is, comes out of Tony Gibson's mouth real easy. There's certain play callers that, whether it's on offense, 4 verticals or whatever, they just have a knack. When in doubt, I'm calling that play or blitz. And it immediately brought me back to the Duke game. I watched, I'm like, oh man, they're going cover 0 again. I don't know how I feel about this, because Cade Klubnik needs to prove to me he can go play after play and lead them down the field. And I'm like, this might give them, I saw that guy catch that shallow cross. I'm like, he might be gone. Yep. And if he's gone, make the quarterback earn it. But I think that's just what Tony Gibson does, and I'll give him credit. If you're going to hang your hat on something and that's what you believe in, and you're going to do it all the time, then do it. So, I kind of criticized them last week against Duke for doing it because they got burned. This time it paid off throughout the game. But, you're living and dying by, it can go either way when that's your philosophy.
As a quarterback on 3rd and 6, there was very little disguise. It was just I kind of was as my quarterback instincts, obviously I wasn't rooting for this for Clemson, but my quarterback instincts were like, oh, let's go.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
I just got to pick my winner, and we're going to have a big game here.
As a quarterback, you like cover 0 because it's just especially when they show it, you know that it's coming. If I get the ball out of my hands without, before they get to me, this could be a touchdown. It just is one-on-one. It takes the thinking out of it. You're not having to go through your read, figure out what coverage they're in. It was clear as day. This is cover 0, and that was almost out the gate. So as a quarterback, I liked cover 0, and it's also kind of like an insult. If you're going to cover 0 me, you don't think I can get the ball out of my hands, and it's an insult to the receivers as well.
You don't think I have any winners in the first second and a half, and it's. I always knew I knew which guy and which route I was going to against 0.
So you're playing with fire doing it, but so far it's paid off for the most part.
And when it works, it works. And Tony Gibson, it's part of his personality is when in doubt, bring the house. Let's talk Peyton Wilson. For those of you that listen to the afternoon show, The Drive on 99.9 The Fan, as part of our predictions going into the week, I said Peyton Wilson was going to score a touchdown, so I'm 100% taking a victory lap on that one. And I even said it would be on a tip pass interception or a fumble recovery, so I'm liking that. The guy's a beast. When he went out of the game, I got very, very nervous. Now, he was walking around on the sideline, looked like he was even testing it, trying to convince some people to come in, go back in the game. But I mean, every week I come away more impressed with him. I think he has to be in the National Defensive Player of the Year conversations at the highest level.
I agree. I mean, there's just really not enough good things to say about him. You feel like a broken record talking about it over and over again. He's just an incredible player. I think the whole stadium was holding their breath when he went down. Sometimes when they're almost like too calm, it's like kind of what Aaron Rodgers did. Like you just know and you just don't show any emotion. That's what went into my head. It looked like he would be okay. What also, just watching Peyton, some people don't love NIL. He's an example of a guy that wanted to come back, partly I think because of NIL and to prove that he could stay healthy to get to the NFL. I mean, it's crazy that this is what we're talking about. I don't know how much that guy's making, but it should be more. I mean, without that guy, this
steal.
This defense may look completely different. This defense may look completely different. Again, it's weird saying that guy's worth every penny in college football, but that guy is worth every penny that he's getting from NIL.
Yeah, defense held on, give him a lot of credit. They played well enough without him, but I did think they lacked some sort of inevitability. The one nitpick I have is I don't actually think he needed to dive for the pylon.
But it looks sweet.
I think he was just thinking I need a new profile picture. I'm wildly athletic, and he could pull it off. And the fact that they went back and reviewed it almost made it look cooler because we just got to see it in slow motion 3 or 4 times. But I'm not sure he actually needed to do that. Last thing here before we move on from the reactions. What do you like? What are the few things to build off? Because coming out of a bye week, you get a win like that at home, big win. Your coach is talking trash in the post game, right? Your quarterback gets to be a little bit more confident. What are the things that they need to latch on to as they move forward? Because what are they? Miami, Wake, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina remaining. You need one for bowl eligibility, and everything else is still on the table.
I think really from MJ's, if you're the quarterback coach, you're the offensive coordinator, you're talking to him, you're saying, hey, we got a really good defense. And although you may have left that game feeling like you didn't play great, you did enough for us to win, and that may be all we need. And it might vary week to week. Tyler Van Dyke coming in this week against Miami, Drake May when they play Carolina. There might become a time where, hey, you got to let it loose, and you're going to need to take some chances and things like that. But we have a really good defense. So to me, it's just building off of taking care of the football. I thought the offensive line played a lot better. That Clemson is notorious for putting defense linemen in the league, and there was not much pressure. So I thought the offensive line played well. There was at the end of the game when Keon Lassane it was a big conversion in the fourth quarter. I think it was Raphael actually at running back. They brought a cover 0, and he stoned the blitzing linebacker. So that was positive to see that some of these blitzes they picked up, and then defensively it's just keep playing the way we are. Again, enforce. Look what happens when we don't give up the big play. Because there wasn't any or was there one explosive big play by Clemson's offense?
By Clemson? Off the top of my head, I don't remember any.
Right. So I think that shows to them
that's been a problem for Clemson all year. Is they don't have the pop plays. I do want to go back to the offensive line quickly here. There's still some communication stuff going on where I know you highlighted some in a text with me. There was one where if you have a back in and they're not bringing 6, there's really no excuse to not keep it give them all day. Yeah. And there were a few where it was either communication, looked like the line was sliding the wrong way. There was one where there was the left tackle and the running back were both on the defensive end, and they just got beat even with the chip. And that kind of stuff, again, looking at it from a quarterback's perspective, there are certain times where you almost turn your brain off to think about the rush. You're like, all right, I got all day because, I have 5 guys in, they're bringing 3, or I have 6 guys in, they're bringing 3 or 4. And MJ didn't have that benefit very often.
The one in particular that definitely bothered me was they were backed up. I think NC State was on about the 10-yard line going out, and Clemson brought 3 defensive linemen. NC State was in 7-man protection, which means there's the 5 offensive linemen, the running back, and the tight end. Somehow, the 6 guys end up on 2 defensive linemen, and the running back is stuck blocking one-on-one with a defensive end. I mean, that is the ultimate nightmare matchup. And then MJ looks like he's holding the ball because none of his checkdowns are getting out. I mean, as a quarterback, you see they're in a 3-down front, and you're in a 7-man protection, you're immediately thinking, oh, I'm getting both my running back and tight end out after they stay in protection and get out. So,
that becomes like the football chess game, right? Because until they release, you only have 3 guys in the route, and they have 8 in coverage.
Right.
So you're not only thinking, I have all day to throw, you're thinking, I might need all day because these guys are going to take a while to get open, find the hole, or I'm going to need to wait for the tight end or running back to get out. And you're making all these calculations very quickly. So if you don't have all day, that's an issue. That means the protection broke down when it definitely shouldn't have. And even worse, the quarterback's going to be surprised that the protection broke down when it shouldn't have.
That's bad ball. I mean, there's no way of getting around it. I'm sure that was one of the first things getting cleaned up when they watched film the next day. But also, I think there was a huge growth in the number of, or the lack, I guess, no penalty. I mean, there was barely any penalties. Offensive line cleaned that up from the Duke game. And I think that shows when we stay on schedule, when we take care of the football with the defense we have, we can beat anyone in our conference.
Ooh, that's a way to end a podcast right there. Mike Glennon, my co-host. I'm Tim Donnelly. We'll be back later this week with more Pack Therapy. See you, everybody.